because having two men around is quite unusual in terms of, our evolutionary history. But I still think that it should be permitted. I do worry about, what kind of a state would we have that would prevent, let's say, a trans woman from attempting to breastfeed a baby, or for two gay men from adopting, or from people using polygenic screening. And I think that unless something became so widespread that almost every child was raised under these unusual conditions, I think on average, I'd prefer to have a weaker state than one that can intervene in cases where harm is ambiguous.
Yeah, I mean, the only one where I'd be much the one that alarms me most in that list is a trans woman attempting to breastfeed, just because of the cocktail of drugs that you'd have to do to make that.
I tried to look into this, and I don't know if you've done. This is a thing that universally fascinates and disgusts people. This trans woman lactating.
I'm not
thing.
surprised. It's very uncanny valley kind of. Yeah.
And I remember I listened to an episode of Gender: A Wider Lens, where a woman was talking about being raised by a trans woman. Her father started cross-dressing and then became a trans woman. And she was looking into this, and she says that that the drugs that they give you to lactate at very high concentrations can cause a heart attack at high enough concentrations. But what I think that she didn't mention is that what I've heard is that a trans woman can make maybe 2 tablespoons of milk a day. The amount of milk they can make is really tiny. And so I've never seen somebody do a really deep dive, a dispassionate, okay, let's get out the fact that a trans woman lactating, including the idea that an autogynephilic male is going to lactate into a baby's mouth, potentially although I find it difficult to imagine that anybody can get sexual thrills while lactating. Maybe men are not above it. I myself had no sexual interest in lactating.
I think men would surprise you on that count.
Let's say try to do a dispassionate analysis, like what is the actual possibility of harm? And I'll also say that babies sometimes refuse their mother's breast milk if she eats a weird food or is sick or something like that. It's not unheard of for a baby to refuse a mother's breast milk. So taking those things into account, what is the actual possibility of harm? And as much as I think it's, I'm not disgust sensitive, I can see why it's gross, but I just think the liability is quite small.
So I have two objections, both of which you might say are irrational, but I'll offer them nonetheless. One, I'm so annoyed at the fact that I currently am having terrible problems with pelvic pain as a consequence of being pregnant, and I'm not allowed to take anything stronger than paracetamol. I'm not allowed to take antihistamines to control hay fever. I'm not, the list of things that you cannot take as a pregnant woman is so long, and doctors will literally just not permit you, they will not prescribe you something. And then to say, for basically political reasons, that we will prescribe these basically experimental drugs to some bloke who wants to breastfeed for his own identity reasons. I'm like, that makes me furious. But two, I think it sets off what I've christened nonce radar. You know what a nonce is, Janet.
A nonce is a pedophile. You also said that men shouldn't be nannies or work at daycares because of nonce, or preventing nonces entirely. Yes. Yeah,
I'd also apply that to women working in the military and police. Yeah. So I'm equal opportunities, at least on that front. Not for nonce reasons, but just for physical ill-suitedness reasons. I think that people have, and I think this might be more true of women than men, although that I'm not sure, that's impressionistic, have a strong sense that they don't like weird sexual behavior from men. They don't mind it so much from women, but they don't like weird sexual behavior from men because it might indicate other more sinister forms of weird sexual preference, like pedophilia.
Yeah, I got in trouble for tweeting something to the effect that, like, women can say that they have an orgasmic birth, that they have an orgasm while they birth. I've even heard women say that they have an orgasm while they breastfeed, and people are like, "Oh, that's nice."
Yeah, right. It's a serious point. I mean, you might think this woman's like kooky, but yeah, it's because we know that women are so much less likely to be sexually coercive and violent. and also that women are small. I mean, the incidences of women sexually abusing children are non-zero, right? So we shouldn't be completely dismissive of it. But in terms of who is most likely to present this kind of harm, it's clearly men, and also other kinds of sexual harm directed at adults. So I think that's why, and it may seem unfair, to say, why should you find like a guy being a furry or interested in leather or something like that would set off nonce radar, because those things are benign. I think the reason is because people intuit that paraphilias cluster, which they do.